first of all, just following up on what Chris said, I find in this whole debate, which has been going on for a long time now, and I'll get to that in a second, but it's very easy to come up with reasons not to do something, and this is what I find throughout the kind of discussions around difficult issues like this. It's easy to come up with reasons not to do something. And a few years ago, and actually the director referred to it in his report, we did have a prolonged discussion around issues to do with investments in companies that were supplying arms to Israel. And we did have a vote, and a very narrow vote at the time, a single vote majority, not to do our own engagement with those companies and come back with recommendations to committee. And it's absolutely a great shame, and something I have a lot of regrets about, that was the decision the committee made at the time, because if we'd done that, we would have conducted engagement, and we would now be in a much better place to answer the questions that members of the public keep bringing to us. And until we get to grips with it, and until we actually address the issues that they are concerned about, then we're going to go round in circles for a long time, and that's in nobody's interest. Just want to go through a few little highlights of the report from my point of view. The 75% figure is addressed in section 3.5. It also says, or also refers to, where a moral consensus cannot be reasonably presumed. Now, the meeting that I referred to, I think it's about 3 years ago now, there was a lot of correspondence. I was chair of the committee at the time, getting a lot of correspondence from people in favour of divestment and people against divestment. And of course, 3 years later, we're in a radically different position. Most of Gaza has been levelled and flattened, and tens of thousands of civilians have been murdered. And we have the issues of genocide that are increasingly being brought to the fore, not least by Amnesty International in the last week or so. So that's a radical change from where we were 3 years ago. And it's different now because we're getting people asking us to address this, but nobody's coming forward with the opposite point of view. Because, you know, the whole world, whether they're prepared to admit it or not, can see what is going on and can see that it's an appalling occurrence. And it's absolutely right that people come to us with concerns about how their money is being invested. Because if you had a private sector pension, you've got all kinds of options about how your money is invested or not invested. You can invest in funds that are fossil fuel free. You can invest in socially responsible funds that would exclude weapons manufacturers. So you know where your money is going. And the LGPS doesn't have that flexibility. It's not geared up to address these concerns. And it's a major failing in the LGPS. And I know that later in the agenda, we'll be discussing a current government consultation. I think it would be a very good idea if we got across to the government that as part of their reforms to the LGPS, they need to think about that and give people that option. It's not fair that people are paying into a pension fund that is then investing in companies that are complicit in genocide. That's not right. And people should be able to avoid that. 3.6 refers to engagement. But I'd really question where the engagement is around Gaza and that issue. I think the LGPS is really letting us down. I've looked back at the previous responsible investment reports that come to the Investment Monitoring Working Party. And the last couple of reports, there's been just minimal reference to Gaza, and with specific reference to one company, a freight company that has links with the region. So the LGPS is not actually doing the engagement that we wanted to do. Why is the LGPS not actually engaging with the companies that people are asking us to divest from? So again, I think we really need to be raising that with the LGPS, that why are you not actually doing the engagement that we want you to do? 3.12 refers to a lack of consistency. I'm not convinced that that's a great argument, that they look at other ethical funds and say there's a lack of consistency. But what struck me about it was it made no reference at all to one of our other LGPS funds, Waltham Forest, Labour-controlled, Waltham Forest in London has voted its pension committee to divest completely from the defence industry, just completely from defence. They have voted to do that. Okay, and nobody here is actually suggesting that. Okay, so, you know, there are precedents, but they're not picked up in the work that Reddington is actually doing. So I think this report is a good step forward. I think the recommendation is fine, but it doesn't address the concerns that people keep coming back to us with. So for that reason, I'm proposing an additional recommendation to the existing one, which, for the benefits of the webcast, I'll read out since there's no members of the public here anymore. So the recommendation I'm proposing, in addition to what's already recommended, is that given the level of concern expressed by members of Merseyside Pension Fund, officers are asked to prepare a report on the steps required and the fiduciary implications of divesting from companies supplying arms to Israel. So I'm moving that, Chair. Thank you.